Good morning. My name is Anne-Marie Sowder. I'm a professor of construction management here at City Tech, and I'm here today to talk to you about metacognition. You may be wondering what that is. We'll go into it, but the basic idea is what can you do to ace any construction management or civil engineering course that we have here at City Tech. We have 3 different tracks you may be part of. You may be a civil engineering associate student, you may be a construction management associate student, you may be in the construction engineering technology BTech. These strategies that we're going to talk about today are appropriate for any of these tracks. The desired outcomes from these strategies, we want you to take some time and analyze your current learning strategies. You should understand exactly what changes you need to implement to make an A in this course now, and you'll have some concrete strategies to use during the remainder of the semester. You will use them in this course and beyond. You will become a more efficient learner by studying smarter, not necessarily harder, and I am here to strongly recommend these strategies, not only as a professor in this department, but also somebody who's going through some fellowship work right now and is having to use some metacognition strategies to ace my own coursework. Take a minute and reflect on this. What's the difference, if anything, between studying and learning? To think about this another way, ask yourself which task you would work harder on. Would you work harder to make an A on a test, or would you work harder to teach the material to this class? Now, on the one hand, if you're making an A on the test, you want to do well, you want to memorize the material, you want to be able to perform well on the test, but you have a single outcome. Teaching the material to a class is a little bit more of a moving target. You have to become something of an expert in the subject matter in order to teach. So then ask yourself, which mode have you been in this class so far this semester? Have you been in study mode or learn mode? The question that I want to ask you now is it possible to work harder than you're already working? And I have here a picture of an airline attendant, and it's not just an airline attendant, it's somebody giving a safety demonstration. And this is a story that was told to me. It goes like this. You're sitting on the tarmac waiting to take a flight somewhere. The flight attendants go through the safety instructions. They show you how to fasten your seatbelt, they show you how to put on your air mask, they show you where the life vests are. Do you pay attention? Do you know the answers to those questions? Now, you're 40,000 feet in the air, and the same demonstration happens again. The captain comes on the air and says, we're going into a bit of turbulence, we're going to be losing cabin pressure. The air masks all of a sudden suddenly fall down in front of everybody, and the flight attendants come out to do the same presentation again to show you how to put the mask on over your face. The plane is shaking, and now are you paying attention? Now are you listening? And the answer is yes, of course you're paying attention now. So the point of this story is if you can learn, if you can pay attention, if you can study at 40,000 feet, you can learn and you can study and you can pay attention on the ground. And the kinds of strategies that we're going to be going on and talking about today, the real concrete strategies for paying attention at the 40,000 foot level, can be applied at the ground level so that you don't always have to be operating in crisis mode. But to ace any course, we want to stay in learn mode, not study mode. You want to study as if you have to teach the material, not just to make an A on the test. You may be wondering, is this important? And the answer is yes. College courses are harder than high school courses. They're moving faster, the material is more difficult, it's cumulative, there are more kinds of problems and more kinds of questions involved. And there's more application of material involved. We're looking at less memorization, more analysis, more higher level learning criteria. Let's use metacognition to become an expert learner. What is metacognition? This is your ability to think about thinking. You want to think about yourself as a problem solver. You want to be able to monitor and control your mental processing. You want to be able to ask yourself questions like, am I understanding this material? And ultimately, we hope that you are accurately judging your level of learning. This is Bloom's taxonomy. If you're not familiar, I was mentioning it before when I was talking about the difference between high school and college learning levels. The way that this works is we've got a pyramid, and at the higher levels of learning, in the higher levels of thinking, we are creating new things based on the elements that we've learned at the lower levels. And at the basic level, the most basic level, the bottom of the pyramid, we're just remembering things. It's just about memorization. At this level, we want to retrieve, recognize, we can recall things for a test. As we move up the ladder, we see that we can understand material. Another step up is applying the material. We go up again and we are able to analyze the material. Go up again, evaluate things. We're making value judgments at this level. And at the highest level, we're putting the elements together into a new and coherent functional whole. This is the creation level at the top of the pyramid. The point of this is that each of these levels of the pyramid builds on the levels below. It leads up to a cumulative, comprehensive, and the most sophisticated use of the information that we're gathering as we're going through the classes. And as you may remember from your high school level exams and your lower level exams, a big part of what you have to do is just memorize things, just remember what you've heard and what you've talked about in class. This is not going to be enough as we go into college level material, where we're being asked more and more to analyze material, to evaluate it based on different sets of criteria, and to create new ideas ourselves based on what we've learned. What we want to be thinking about here is, when you were in high school, if you wanted to make an A or a B or a C at class, what level were you working on? You were probably topping out around application step 3. You had to typically memorize a certain amount of material, understand it, and possibly apply it in a novel situation. Now we want to think, at what level of Bloom's taxonomy do you have to operate to make A's in college? And this is where we start really emphasizing analysis, evaluation, and creation of new ideas. So the question is, what do you do to move yourself higher up the taxonomy? And the answer is the study cycle. We said there were concrete methods. Here they are. Here's the study cycle. It works essentially this way. You preview material, you attend class, you review the material, you study the material, and then you assess your learning as you go through. One of the bold, critical, highlighted items is go to class. And don't just go to class, attend. When you are in class, participate to the level that you're able. This is very important. Before you come to class, preview the material. Don't show up unaware of what's going to be talked about, what's going to be discussed. You'll be behind when you arrive. Review after class as soon as you can after class. Just take a few minutes and go through the material, see what's there, and try and formulate questions that you might have as soon as possible after the class. During your study sessions, repetition is the key. You could ask questions about what you've learned, but what we'd like to focus on is intense study sessions, and we'll talk about that below. don't forget weekend review, but the idea behind an intense study session is that it's an hour or less. You try to do it 3 to 5 times a day in relatively short bursts. What you want to do is think about specifically what you hope to study with focus, reward yourself, and then review. Each of these steps has a target duration of a relatively short amount of time. Just spend a minute or two thinking about your goal. What do you hope to accomplish? Then study for half an hour, 45 minutes. Then take a break, walk around, have a snack, they suggest, and then take just a few minutes and go over what you just studied. This kind of repetition will really help you break up material, help you ask the kind of questions that you need to work your way up the Bloom's taxonomy. Effective strategies. We want to think about always solving problems and answering questions without looking at the example or the solution. So for example, if you're working through problems in your book, don't just flip directly to the book. You want to make an effort to answer the questions fully on your own without looking back over the material. Although my colleagues would like to point out that before you turn in your homework, you should certainly go back and make sure that you have answered the questions correctly. The next one may seem counterintuitive based on what we've talked about, memorization being the most basic kind of informational learning. But it's important that if you're asked to memorize something, that you memorize it. That's because this will form the foundation for the higher levels of learning. If you're not able to work in the material, if you're not familiar with the material, you're going to have a hard time performing more complex operations like analysis and synthesis of material. Always remember to ask why, how, and what if questions. And this is not just relevant to class, but this goes on in your life. Some of the most important questions that make you an effective employee or an effective boss or an effective person in the workforce is asking why and how things are done. You want to test your understanding by giving mini lectures on concepts, and this goes back to the idea of studying to the level of having to teach the material rather just having to regurgitate it to do well on a test. You want to review material every day. Spend as much time in intense study sessions as you can each day. Don't just try and cram at the end of a week or right before a test. Use the study cycle with intense study sessions. Actively engage in class workshops, and aim for 100% mastery, not just 90%. Now, we're going to ask ourselves, which one of the next two slides more accurately describes your actions before this assessment? Were you like this person? 5 reasons students do not do well on assessments. They, 1, didn't spend time on material. They, 2, started the homework too late. 3, didn't memorize the information that was needed. 4, did not use the book. Number 5, and the one I see most often among students who are trying, is I assumed I understood the information, either because you were professionally familiar with it or you had read it and reread it but you hadn't tried any applications. So are you like this student or were you like this student? And this one is 5 reasons students score an A on assessments. They did a review for every class. They did the homework a little bit at a time. They used the book and did the suggested problems. They made flashcards of the information to be memorized, and they practiced explaining the information to others. You don't have to be 100% like either of these 2 slides, but which student were you most like? Do you most resemble the group that did not do well, that was poorly prepared for the exams or the assessments? Or were you more like the group that made an A and that you prepared a little bit at a time, gradually, over and over again? Another strategy to focus on is getting the most out of your homework. One of the key things to do is to start the problems early, preferably the day they're assigned while the information's freshest in your mind. Again, they want to highlight, don't flip back to the example problems. Work through the problems yourself. When we talk about giving up too soon or spending too much time, we're talking about really working in 15 to 30-minute increments. This is going to be the sweet spot. You want to focus on getting the most from tutors, peer advisors, faculty office hours, and study groups. Try to understand the concept or work the problem by yourself first, but do show up to help sessions and come prepared to ask questions. And do your best at that time to explain the material to the tutor or the instructor. A challenge to you going forward is to have a metacognition discussion on your own, and on your next assessment, score an 80 or better. If you could take a minute after class today and just 1 or 2 minutes and write which of the strategies that I've talked about will you use over the next 3 weeks. And the reason is, if you don't try it within the next 48 hours, you probably never will. So one final note, we have additional resources at OpenLab under Perkins Peer Advisement. You can see our CMCE department peer advisement hours. We have a lot of tutoring available. Please take advantage of this. There's also information on job placement under the Open Lab in this area, and take advantage of your professor's office hours. If you have any questions, you can also contact me directly at my CityTech email address, which is amsowder@citytech.cuny.edu. Thank you very much.